XForce Trend and Risk Score, what is it? The Threat Intelligence Quarterly. Call it Trend and Risk Report. Am I wrong?
Yeah, we call it Jim.
Oh, that's okay. But I'll go ahead and hand it back over to David. So.
Good job. Awesome. I feel inadequate without a beard. So. Yeah, so we like to mix it up a little bit, so we're doing the trend report second, but we can, again, this is a part of the 100.
Like a Tarantino flick.
107, exactly. There's so many ways you can go with that. The trend report's important, it's valuable, we're going to talk about why. So again, it all hinges upon our framework, but as a part of that framework, we see Patty again. The research and threat is what we're going to be talking to right now. So we've got a large native security research organization within IBM, and why do I say that? There are vendors in the marketplace who buy security research. They will buy it from a third party, and they will use that research to then feed its systems. And as you can imagine, the systems are only as good as the data that you're using to feed your systems to protect. So in that vein, with our large security organization, research organization, most of them were at Black Hat a couple of weeks ago. They're all over the world. They're predominantly focused or headquartered out of Atlanta. The research organization works for Rob Freeman, who's a good guy. We had a meeting with some of our government types on Tuesday. And so Rob hires people who are very smart and a little different and exciting in a good way. So my first day at IBM was meeting with the XForce team, and they were interesting. And so I realized very quickly I would never work in that organization. But the key point is it's native to IBM. It's the information that they do is our intellectual property. So you're not going to see us buying. We will buy or go and get research from other organizations, but again, you're seeing most of the research that we have, all the research that we have is native to IBM. So here's the mission: monitor, research, educate, and deliver. So kind of a personal story associated with XForce is there's a guy named Chris Valasek. He works at IO Active. He's the guy that figured out the whole hacking of a car. He's just a good guy. But he was on the Today Show, and we went up and we were the groupies that were at the Today Show. I went to see Al Roker, but the other guys went to see him. So anyway, Chris is awesome. If you ever have a chance to see him or talk to him, give him a hug for me. But he was one of the guys that would reverse engineer and worked in XForce, and so he's gone on and done broader things with us, or for us, and with IO Active now. But the key mission within XForce, as it states above, how does that feed into our systems, and how is that important, and how do we fuel the XForce report based on their capabilities? So a lot of the research, a lot of the charts you're getting ready to see are from these vectors: the IP reputation, the web application control, URL web filtering, and so on. So what we tell our customers, this is essentially what XForce does. So we've touched on this quite a bit. We're managing a lot of the internet, and we're utilizing and getting smarter. So if you ever are in Atlanta, it is tough to get down to the Global Threat Operations Center, but it is pretty slick, and it's a bunch of pods and folks that are handling incident response and utilizing IBM solutions to do that, and hybrid solutions, so solutions from other organizations. So, the key point to this chart is less about the dots as it is about the attack types. So, again, this goes back to a little bit earlier today, about 27 slides ago, when we talked about how people are attacked. And, those vectors are how we fuel the system to protect our customers. So, the key takeaways you'll read in the report is the operational sophistication, the leaks. I mean, the data breaches are up, right? So that's only increasing as we see 2014. And then, the number of records that were leaked is just crazy. So, again, this is only increasing, and so protection needs to be there. So, in a situation where we're meeting with a customer and they don't have any protection, that's a problem. And you'll find us saying, just do something. I mean, it doesn't, if you don't want to buy from IBM, you know, just buy something, right? Because the more data that's leaked, the more data that's exfiltrated from organizations, the more likely eventually it's going to affect you or a loved one. So protection is important.
Question. So I'm looking 2011, 2012, saying a lot of undisclosed bubbles. Not so much between 2012 and 2013, but it looks like from 2013 on, we're starting to see more of these undisclosed bubbles. I don't know, do you guys have any maybe unofficial insight into some of that undisclosed?
And we talked a little bit about this during the break, but in some cases, there will be instances where we see that a breach has happened, but because the parties aren't informed, we're not able to be able to depict exactly how that breach took place. So that's more of a community issue as opposed to actually us not knowing. So, you know, 50% of organizations underestimate web applications. You know, this talks about, you know, the open SSL bug that happened with the web servers, remediate the application vulnerabilities. We talked a little bit about this. You know, something that kind of hits home, you know, we'll be in a session with a customer and they will have, like, Heartbleed, right, was a good example, where it got a lot of publicity and it was a problem. The open SSL is a problem, and from our perspective, you know, the nice thing about XForce, where there's a situation where customers need information, we actually are going to have, we have a portal, it's called an XForce customer portal, because what customers used to have to do to figure out what XForce actually did in terms of protections, they had to go to a CHUM file, CHM file. Yeah. So I read that once, but the bottom line is customers really wanted to understand what the secret sauce was around XForce and how they did what they did, how they developed the D codes. So the open SSL, the Heartbleed situation was a good example where we gave customers the access via our XForce portal, so they would have to log in. So we had an association, so it just wasn't open to everybody. But if you wanted to pay for that subscription, you could, and you could go in and see exactly what we did to protect against the open SSL impact associated with the Heartbleed attack. And that one hit home for us because we had folks up at one of the government locations and, you know, everyone left the room and said, you know, your IPS fired on something and we need you for the next couple hours to help us figure it out. So we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, huh, that's interesting. So we called XForce and got them on the phone and they helped those folks throughout the rest of the day. So the OWASP 10 that associates with that's something that we work very closely with, both that and the MITRE vulnerability documentation. The important point here is web applications tends to be a big area of attack. This goes through percentages in terms of what we're seeing in terms of cross-site scripting or data exposure. And again, the percentage of scanned web applications with a threat. So, we're building more deeper data as it relates to each of these attacks. So there tends to be more requests for scanning of the code. So I'll give you an example of how it relates to all of us in some way. Most DoD agencies, when they develop an application, they will develop it at their customer site. So I am Lockheed Martin or I'm Northrop Grumman. I'm on contract to develop an application. I'll go to my site and I'll develop it and then I'll deliver that to my customer. Well, the site where I'm developing it doesn't have the same protection or controls as the customer site. So we'll develop an application off-site, not scan it, not protect, scan the code, see where they're vulnerable for the code, and then we'll develop it to a customer, and then all of a sudden it blows up. So in this instance where customers are wanting to scan more frequently, from the code scanning as well as the dynamic scanning, we're seeing an increase in that because the time lost once you complete the development of an application or you complete the development of the code, once you go into production and then you scan it and it blows up and you've got to do a bunch of remediation, the cost is very significant to fix that. So spam, the interesting part is we're seeing a lot more of attribution to countries in our reports, and it's actually pretty slick. So Even though we were, us, Google, and Microsoft are basically the top 3 companies that scan the internet. It's pretty much between us and Google, and we're never going to buy Google. But it's kind of cool to see how we scan and we try and figure out, we do figure out where the attacks are coming from. So the attribution is important, as you can imagine, for certain organizations to know where those attacks are coming from. And a lot of the attack vector that they use is spam. So it's important for the IT or the security folks to know that, mainly due to the fact that they just want to know where it's originating from. But again, it goes back to the user education in terms of clicking on URLs. Don't do that. If your dad sends you a PDF that looks random, then don't utilize it. Or excuse me, don't click on it or download it.
I'm very surprised not that I don't see China on that list.
Yeah.
That's the 49.1.
Yeah.
It's a question that's been asked.
It's just cool we did not answer that.
Dave, what can we do to get first place? I'm kind of upset at the city, let's say.
We could,
I guess there's 2 ways to go. We can reduce spam from other places, or we can increase our spam. I'm okay with either.
I send out as much spam as possible. So
You're doing your part.
I do my, yeah, you'll see tonight.
We tighten it.
Yeah, right.
I think, come on.
Well, it's interesting. When questions are asked, it's interesting some of the answers we get from the standpoint of, there is spam that comes from a country, but it might not originate from that country. So, it might filter through China, but it originates from Russia or, Italy, which, I'm not, yeah.
So do you see different types of attacks coming from different countries?
Correct.
Where this is a spam attack?
Predominantly.
You might not see China come up as number 1 in there, but
Exactly.
they could show up as number 1 in another country.
Now, if you throw up a QRadar and you look at that, as a POC or a POT, it's interesting to see what that tells you, right? I mean, for your environment, you might see a totally different situation where you see the 49% is America. It's just interesting to see how that plays out. But again, this is what IBM sees in terms of our environment and what we're being attacked with. But as you can imagine, the more you educate the end user, in our case, or the more you filter out the spam. So maybe we filter more of certain countries out automatically, so we're not seeing that vector or that origination point as much. So old image, I mean, this technique is interesting from the historical data point. The variants that we're seeing, the first attack and then the new one, and then again, I mean, you see the date, you see the time movement. And so it's interesting to see how we can see over a time period, we see different variants of sometimes the same attack. Or in some cases, you'll see the same attack just later on after they try again and again. So this is, this is just an example of the different techniques that are used, right? So, I'll get something that always blows me up on my Hotmail account, which I use for spam. I'll get an email from Department of Justice. Click on this link, and then it takes me to another location and asks me to input a bunch of information. So it's just interesting. It's almost like there's a whole career path on developing different spam techniques. And there are people that I'm sure do that. That's why we see all the differences.
What we're also seeing is attacks being productized and sold, which...
Like a toolkit.
Yeah.
You go to a form and say, I need some code to attack company XYZ, and then people can bid on creating that code for you to take and then launch it. It's, maybe we should change business. Maybe I should go. I don't know. Google it. I'm sure you can figure it out.
It's not from your work phone.
Yeah.
So So this is interesting. From what from where I sit, I didn't see as much of this last year in the second half, but you can see some of the stuff that we're seeing across the board as it relates to the medical field, which is interesting. I mean, I find that to be compelling, given the fact that I have so many old people in my life, so I see a lot of their email. Older people, maybe my parents, but I'll stop talking now. The bot infections, locations XP, I mean, the window XP stuff was crazy towards the end of last year and in the first half of this year. So this just goes into a little bit more in terms of the infections of the spam bot and by country. But as you can notice, or as you notice by the country, there are certain countries don't show up, which is interesting. So this just goes through, you look at bandwidth. This is more based on the XForce team and what they're seeing in the report. Some of the advice that we roll out, or they roll out to our customers, in terms of these are the things you need to be looking for. And in a lot of ways, these are not technology, right? So this isn't, you're not going to buy a solution that's going to fix this. In some cases, you just need to educate your workforce so that you're sensitive to different ways of attack. Or different ways things are happening. And then, of course, we have our XForce team. We have the Twitter, which is pretty slick, and then, of course, our securityintelligence.com. But one thing that I'll highlight here is, in addition to the portal that they have developed to give customers insight into what XForce does and some of our decodes and attacks, there's also the ability to gain access to XForce in terms of customer interaction. Meaning, there's panels within the community, whether it's banking or the intelligence community or retail. XForce will tend to be a part of those CIO-led discussions or cybersecurity events, and you'll see more of that as we continue down throughout this year. Our next XForce report will be coming out at the end of the first week of September, and that'll be for quarter 3. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great. That's our trade report. It's pretty awesome. You can download it. You can put my information in. I'll give you my business card so you don't have to put yours. So they can't email you constantly.
Or an alternative is, if you signed up with us, use your email address, we can actually send that out to you guys. That'd be something you'd be interested in.
And I can, any of these slides that you guys want, I can provide it to these guys so they can get it out to you.
My favorite's the bubble slide. I like bubbles.
Bubbles are good. Bubbles are good. I have kids. They like bubbles. I like bubbles.
Right. So I think we're just gonna go out to the front atrium area. I know Adam has his case study that he wants to present on BAM. So I believe we're done here. Anyone have any questions for me or Adam or anyone else?
Okay, we're running a bit ahead of schedule, so we may not be completely set up.
It looked like they were set up when I checked out.
So just be gentle, don't judge us too much.
Food might not be ready, but we definitely have the beer ready.
Oh, well, then
We'll be-
It's not 5 o'clock.